99.5 FM, Lister Live right here. 212-209-2900. Show is dedicated to Robert Knight's mother who just passed away. Lloyd D'Aguilar, how are you feeling this morning?
Good, man. How are you doing?
Don DeBar, how are you feeling this morning?
Good morning. What's up, you guys?
Hey, Don, say hello to Lloyd D'Aguilar, live out to kill some Jamaica.
How you doing, Lloyd? What's up, man?
All right, man. I'm good. How are you?
And
Very well, thank
Don
you.
is sitting in for David Katz, who is away. And we had to get into the Miles Coltrane thing right here. This is a fantastic piece. This is Miles Davis live with John Coltrane and the rest of the gang. Have you ever seen this?
Sure.
This is incredible.
Yeah, it's bad, man.
Damn.
It looks sweet.
Yeah.
Who else on the cut?
Well, it's John Coltrane and the bassist, let's see. I forget the name of the bassist, but these are the original cats on the track.
Yeah.
Damn. So what?
Yep, so what? That's what it is. That's
Yeah.
right.
So what's happening in your part? Let's start with Don DeBar, then we slip over to Kingston, Jamaica with Lloyd D'Aguilar, and feel free to jump in, Lloyd. What's going on with the latest in Libya? I heard that the African what's that? The Union?
African Union, yeah.
They say they're not down with hanging him high.
Yeah, they not only that, apparently they're threatening to withdraw en masse from the United Nations if this doesn't stop. They're demanding that they get a seat on the Security Council, a permanent seat. They're demanding that Europe's permanent seats get reduced. They want England and France to lose theirs and subsume that into a European Union one. And they, of course, the impetus for this is the ICC and the Security Council resolutions that are enabling the war on Libya and the threat of arresting Gaddafi, and the failure to consult with them or to pay attention to them while they're bouncing around their continent.
Yeah.
So, big stuff. It's pretty interesting stuff.
Amazing. Lloyd D'Aguilar, what says you?
I kind of have mixed feelings about the whole thing.
Let's hear it.
Yes, I agree with the Africans that the International Criminal Court seems to be focusing on the, African dictators, and to the exclusion of the European leaders, military people who are committing crimes against humanity, and so that's a concern. But at the same time, from where I sit, Gaddafi is an enemy of the people, and he needs to be brought to justice. I don't know how I know there's a problem with the International Criminal Court, the way it's going about it, but the Africans themselves have to face the reality that Gaddafi is a criminal and he needs to be brought to book, and he needs to be put on trial for all the crimes he has committed against the Libyan people, just as they're trying to put Mubarak on trial for his crimes, and the rest of them need to be put on trial for crimes against humanity.
Don DeBar.
Yeah, we're going to disagree on that point.
Yeah, that's okay.
I was in Tripoli 2 years ago, I guess, a year and a half ago, probably more accurate, October 2009. And I've been in contact with people that were, in the last period in two different trips, a broad group of people from around the United States, from South Africa, from Australia, ranging from Cynthia McKinney, Michael Horrigan, the human rights lawyer, a whole bunch of people, Keith Harmon Snow, Dinan Kamati, a whole bunch of folks that, on the ground, the experience. I mean, there were 2 million people in the street in Libya last week supporting the regime. The information that we're getting with the accusations of the crimes that Gaddafi has supposedly committed against the Libyan people. I assume you're talking about in this period, right, since January? Are you talking in the last 40 years?
Yeah, I'm focusing on that. I'm focusing on the crimes similarly committed by Mubarak. I mean, people are democratically expressing their rights, that they want him out. He's been in power for too long. and they want a new kind of democratic system in North Africa, in the Middle East. And he has used the same sort of methods that the others have used. I mean, we can have a discussion about his policies and so on and so forth. I mean, but we're talking about this immediate period,
right,
where,
right, that's what
he has, been excessive in dealing with people expressing their legitimate democratic aspirations.
Well, that's what we're told. But when it comes down to, there's the two charges that deal in this period, since January, were the allegation that he had been using aircraft to, attack his own people in protest, which there were specific charges that were leveled, and the Russians came out and said almost immediately thereafter, excuse me, we have been watching on satellite surveillance for the entire time, and there has been no aerial activity of that kind at all. That was the first part. And the other part having to do with the the threat. Really, it was supposedly the threat of civilian deaths, because they had we're talking about 150,000 people or 300,000 people were going to be killed in all of this, and that never happened. If you examine the allegations closely, you see that actually the ones that were leveled back in February and March that enabled the Security Council resolutions, the people that leveled them, the Security Council, by the way, didn't do any fact-finding. They did not set up a committee to study it. They did nothing but take the media reports that were coming out. And the source of the media reports was primarily Al Jazeera, which is...
So do you have any doubts that, he has used force against the people who started out peacefully protesting against his rule? Do you have any doubts about that?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. The people on the ground there say that it didn't happen.
Nobody was killed by Gaddafi's forces?
Not at the beginning. I mean, there was a point in time when these people took arms up against the government, and I assume that after that, that's you don't like to do that, but that's a legitimate protection of the state, of the people.
Yeah.
I mean, they're handing out guns to the people.
Well, let me ask.
My recollection is a little different from yours. I mean, that's not how the whole thing started. People started out peacefully, and then the military and the security forces started to repress. And as a result, people had to take up arms.
Mm-hmm. That was the narrative. That was the narrative. But the situation is, number one, the arms were there pretty early, and where did they come from? And number two, he's actually the government is arming the people. They've opened the arms out to the people in the areas that they still hold.
So you have no problem with what's happening. You're defending Gaddafi then. You're on his side.
Well, I'm actually saying that the enabling narrative for the invasion of Libya by the United States and NATO
that's where the problem went wrong. When the U.S. forces, when the NATO started bombing, that's where the problem never started before that. I mean, it's all NATO's fault. And Gaddafi is good. He is, he's a Democrat. He's responding to the, the demands of the people for democracy. No problem.
I didn't say all that. You did. But all I'm saying is that the enabling narrative, that the accusations that resulted in 1970 and 1973 at the Security Council, where there were specific charges, it turns out no one is making those allegations anymore because they were either refuted directly, like with the Russians. The Russian defense minister and foreign minister said, we were monitoring their airspace the whole time. That never happened.
Gotcha.
I mean, that hasn't been covered here at all.
The Russians have been defending a lot of murderers for their own reasons. I mean, you would have to agree. China,
Well, let me ask.
It's all politics, man.
Let me ask both of your question. Let's say Gaddafi is like ultimately perfect. How can you defend him staying in for 40 years straight?
Well, first of all, actually, the government structure there is not, it's not strongman dictator government there. They have what, I don't know if you ever read the Green Book?
Yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, essentially, the way, like I saw the way Tripoli is run, for example.
Okay.
You get out to this basically the city hall. It's not city hall, but you go down to the Congress Hall on Tuesday night, whatever night it is. You, me, the three of us go down there. We want to change the parking regulations on 5 blocks of Tripoli. We go down there, and we bring our friends. We propose it. We vote on it. And if we have enough votes, it carries, and now that's the law. If you don't like it, you hear about it next Friday or whatever, you grab your friends and you go down the following Tuesday and you vote it out if you have enough votes. That's how things are run from the municipal level down. At least that's all I've been able to witness.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have state security issues, military basically, and that is.
But if it's so nice, why are people revolting against Gaddafi? I mean, if it's so wonderful, it's so democratic. I mean, why are the people up in arms against him? Are you saying it's conspiracy? What are you saying? I don't understand.
Here's what I'm saying. First of all, let me go back to this. There were 2 million. Libya has 6 million people. That's the population. 6.25, whatever. And 2 million people were in the street last weekend.
Yeah, but that's not the question. The question is, if 2 million of the 6 million are pro-Gaddafi, that's still a minority.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that's all it is.
When I'm talking about the manifestation of opposition to Gaddafi, I mean, you're not dealing with that. As if you're dismissing
I'll deal with
that.
it.
You can't dismiss it.
I'll deal with it directly.
No matter how superficially perfect it looks, because they have councils and all, and I mean, those things can be the perfect setup for dictatorship.
Sure they can.
And regimes use that kind of superficiality all the time, all over the world. They do that. And even if it's a good democracy, if you want to make an advancement on that democracy, it is still their right. The United States supposedly has the best democratic system, so they say. Yeah, but right. if the people of America decided we want a better system, then that's their right.
Don, respond, and then we're going to move the conversation on.
All right,
Go ahead.
But I'll just say this. In fact, the reason for opposition to these demonstrations that took place, the reason you see them centered in eastern Libya is an entirely different matter that has to do with the tribal organizations and the history of the groups there. And there is a racism component to this big time. When you were hearing the allegations of mercenaries earlier that were being leveled, that basically Gaddafi was hiring African mercenaries. The purpose for that and the result of that was to stoke racist feelings against black Africans who are actually black Libyans. It resulted in lynchings and outright murders.
Maybe so. I mean, we agree on that, but you're not necessarily answering my question.
No, I am.
You're bringing other issues in.
No, these kinds of tensions.
I might even agree with you, but you're not agreeing with me because you seem to want to defend the regime at all costs, and I couldn't agree with that.
No, I'm not defending the regime at all costs. It's not my place to do that. I don't live there. That's for the Libyan people to decide. But certainly they don't have an opportunity to decide when NATO was bombing the hell out of them. And
if NATO wasn't there, Gaddafi would be bombing the hell out of them.
No, I don't agree with
that
because he wasn't before.
Gaddafi would be doing. He would be looking for a military solution. And his troops were showing no mercy. That they were going to use them. He'd be using his planes right now to drop bombs all over the place.
Well, he wasn't.
I mean, this is the same thing that was being done all over. Look at what's happening in Syria. Look what's happening in Yemen. Look what happened in Bahrain. It's all over the same pattern that's taking place. What's the difference between what's happening in Libya and what's happening in the rest of the Middle East and North Africa? It's the same thing.
Look at Bahrain, as a matter of fact. The situation in Bahrain has 2 American allies occupying Bahrain. The Saudis and the Qataris. Those are the same people who the media leveled the allegation
of military oppression against people who want change, who want democratic change, who want economic change, who want political change. It's the same pattern of trying to annihilate your enemy.
But what I'm saying is that the military did not attack peaceful protesters in Libya.
They did not do that in Libya. Your credibility is on a question right here when you begin to say that. And to
Well,
say that you're
been
not defending the regime at all costs. I mean,
No.
I don't think you can sustain that kind of argument when you deny the fact
No, the
of
fact
what's been happening. You just lost all credibility, man.
No, not at all.
Credibility in your argument.
Come on, brother. What we're talking about allegations that were made in the media here that no one has.
It's all a media conspiracy. It's all media. It's reported all over the world. I mean, you hear people on all different news channels, describing what's going on. And from your perspective, it's all a conspiracy, and it's all.
No, I don't think he's saying it's a conspiracy. No,
if it's not a conspiracy,
Lloyd.
then I don't know what it is. But I mean, you're just not credible, man. You just sound like an apologist for Gaddafi, and that's it.
My information is based on first-hand information from a dozen people that I know that just spent 2 weeks there, and another group a month earlier that spent 2 weeks there.
You're an apologist,
and speaking with people that are on the ground there.
You've been an apologist, and that's unfortunate. I mean, Gaddafi has spent a lot of money over the years to recruit a lot of people to his side. He spent money all over the place. He gave Castro an award, a humanitarian award, and now he's reaping the benefits of those money that he has spent.
Well,
Libyan money, not his personal money. You want to check his bank account to see how much money he and his sons have all over the world?
Let's get Don to respond. Let's get Don to respond, and then we have to move the conversation on. Lloyd, go ahead, Don.
I'm just going to say we're going to disagree. So,
we're
sort of talking past each
All right.
I strongly disagree.
All right, let me throw this at both of you. Let me throw you this at both of you, because it's interesting what you're saying. But who is saying this about His Imperialist Majesty Barack I? His administration approved the secret detention of a Somali alleged terrorist suspect. You familiar with this, Lloyd and Don?
I'm hearing about that.
On the U.S. Navy ship, where for 2 months, right at the behest of Barack, this cat was subject to military interrogation, and in the absence of a lawyer and without charge. The capture and treatment of Ahmed Abdul Qadir Wassame has embarrassed the United States in what they've gotten away with.
They kidnapped him.
Yeah.
And they held him for 2 months.
Republicans in Congress have objected to the Warsam being brought to New York to be tried. Here we go again. An attempt by the Obama administration to avoid sending him to Guantanamo Bay, so they claim.
Right.
From the opposite viewpoint, civil rights groups have objected to the secret questioning and possibly torture of this cat. What says you, Lloyd, and
well, I mean, Obama. What's the difference between the Obama administration and the torture that they do? His refusal to close down Guantanamo Bay. All the atrocities and the torture of people that have been illegally captured by the American regime. It's the same thing as what's happening in Egypt. It's the same thing. I really don't see a difference, and I don't really see how so-called progressives can be supporting the Obama administration. Pursuing a policy like this is a big embarrassment.
I mean, these are the very things. If you look at the resistance that was organized against the Bush administration, starting almost October of 2001, and moving up particularly when the Iraq War started and afterwards, one of the biggest complaints was exactly this kind of stuff. And these were the things that, people were holding out Obama as, geez, he's a Harvard, constitutional law guy, Harvard Law Review. The comments that were made by him and Biden about how illegal this stuff is, and they've actually increased it, and they've made some pronouncements of policy that even Bush didn't do, which, for example, the right, claiming the right to assassinate and kill people without any process, and actually doing it. I mean, what they did to Bin Laden, for example, they outright assassinated him. They went in and shot him, and with no process, no trial, no hearing, no arraignment, no nothing. It's worse than the last administration in almost every measurable way. and yet you have progressives lining up, so-called progressives lining up to defend him, and the same people that were challenging these same policies, 4 years ago. It's kind of scary, to tell the truth.
Lloyd?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. I mean, I don't have any problem with that at all. I agree with that analysis. This is really, maybe the darkest spot so far on the Obama administration. Well, there are so many.
It's tough. It's a tough list.
Yeah.
So many terrible, so many criminal things that this administration has perpetrated all over the world. That a lot of people, I hope a lot of so-called progressives who voted for him, defended him, and rationalized and apologized are holding their heads in shame when they hear about what happened to this Somalian person. Whether he's an extremist or not is beside the point.
Now,
international law must be upheld. And,
speaking about international law, what's going on in Jamaica now? Political.
Well, what's going on here is that the unions have capitulated to the government. They've all decided to take the offer that is put on the table, because the IMF has determined what public sector workers can receive and so on, and the unions have accepted it. But the real betrayal of the unions is that in short order, a lot of public sector workers are going to be losing their jobs. So rather than mix the two things, which is the salaries, the wage freeze, and the layoffs, and negotiate, bargain on the whole thing, they have just accepted the crumbs that the government has thrown to them. And so, we'll be facing a wave of public sector layoffs to come. Yeah. Mm-hmm. On a personal note, I want to say that I've just discovered that, remember I told you the last time that I was supposed to work on a radio station this week?
Yeah, what's happening with that?
And I'm not working there because I've now been told that I'm blacklisted by the Broadcasting Commission.
Get out of here. Again, Don.
Blacklisted by the Broadcasting
This is an interesting situation down in Jamaica. The University of the West Indies have a radio station called Talk Radio. Is that right, Lloyd?
Yeah, News Talk.
And they come up, they come up here and they get on WBLS, and they come up here and get on WBAI, and they beg for money, and people send them money. And what the folks don't realize is that when you send that money, you need to earmark it and say absolutely no censorship. The situation with Lloyd. Lloyd, explain just briefly what happened.
Well, very briefly, I came to the defense of another talk show host who the Broadcasting Commission pulled the plug on because they didn't like him, and I interviewed him, and so they pulled the plug on his program. I interviewed him, and they pulled the plug on me. And since I've tried to get a job at another radio station, and I understand that radio station has to check with the Broadcasting Commission to find out if they can employ me. And the Broadcasting Commission says no. And, they put their tail between their legs and they say, okay, I'm sorry, we can't employ you because the Broadcasting Commission says you are unemployable. It's been said that I'm too anti-establishment.
Yeah, they said, what do you call it, that you allowed Raga to libel them by saying that they've committed a criminal act. You're talking about Cordell Green and all of that?
Yes, Cordell Green and Dunn.
Yeah, I'm looking at your blog.
He didn't libel anybody. He didn't libel anybody. He just, said what he felt like saying. There was no libel, and certainly the station was never sanctioned. They never even wrote the station a letter to say that, hey, we are protesting anything. They just called the general manager, who is a friend of Cordell Green, and said, look, listen to what Lloyd and Raggard saying on the radio. And the next day I was fired. That's it.
Wow.
Amazing.
That kind of reminds me of an experience I had with a certain radio station in New York City only 2 years ago.
One of the powers of the Broadcasting Commission is that they grant licenses, number one. So this radio station is very grateful to have gotten a license from them. And two, they have a very big advertising budget, something like $28 million.
Wow.
And so with shrinking advertising dollar, everybody's grateful when the Broadcasting Commission advertises on your radio station or in your newspaper. Right. So if they say jump, you say how high.
Right.
And that's the kind of censorship that they are, perpetrating here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Don DeBar, what's happening with the Newburgh 5? There's a decision that came down.
Well, actually, there's something else going on in Newburgh that I want to make sure I get out there. I got a phone call last night from Lily Howard.
How is she doing?
She was a little upset last night.
Ooh.
Here's the context. Her son, Omari Shakur, whose son, Antonio Bryant, was murdered by the police back in 2006.
Right.
Shot in the back 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Is running for mayor. And he has a very good chance of winning. This is
up in Newburgh now.
The city of Newburgh, yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right now they're in the process of gathering signatures for nominating petitions to get on the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
And you need like 300 signatures to be on the ballot for a Democratic Party primary in September.
Yeah.
And he got that at the halfway through the first day. Omari generally gets a couple of thousand, and each time that he's gone out now in the last several years, he's enrolled anywhere from 500 to 1,500 new voters. Now, the people in Newburgh, you have a city of about 30,000 people. The elections generally involve, the city elections generally involve maybe 2,000 or 3,000 voters tops.
Mm-hmm.
And, this city, the conditions there, economic, political, sociological, every measure is the worst for the people that live there of any city in New York State, and probably for most small cities in the United States, and even going through the third world, they would be somewhere in the middle in terms of their economic condition. The people are really in a bad way there. And so they are very disaffected by the political process. Omari has been an organizer there for decades now, and so anyway, long story short, he looks like he's got a shot to win. So apparently, yesterday, his son, the police had been trying to provoke him. Again, I'll repeat, they murdered one of his sons 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And another son yesterday was pulled over at gunpoint with his girlfriend in the car, and basically the girlfriend was roughed up. She had bruises on her. Lily was describing to me on the phone. No, and the reason was that she was between them. It was her impression that they were going to shoot him.
Wow.
For nothing. He was driving a car with the two of them. There was a traffic stop. Somebody else had been pulled over.
Mm-hmm.
He went around that on one of the side streets there. They pulled him over, and with guns drawn, and they arrested him. And he had no weapons, no drugs, wasn't speeding, nothing. There was no reason for the stop.
Mm-hmm.
She was very concerned that they were going to kill him when they took him to the police station last night.
Right.
The last I heard from her was about midnight, and so far that hasn't happened. But we're very concerned about this.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Wow. Why are they so after this family?
Because the reason that Newburgh is in such horrible shape is essentially that the political class in that area, and going from the municipal officials up through Schumer and the whole bunch at the federal level, it's essentially a massive theft of public resources.
Mm-hmm.
That city, again, of 30,000 people, according to the Times-Herald record, receives about $150 million a year in federal and state monies intended to improve housing, education, and do job creation. And that's been true, according to the Times-Herald record, for at least the last decade. So we're talking about $1.5 billion. If you go to Newburgh, there's $1.5 billion for housing, education, and job creation. You would say, where's the housing, where are the jobs, and where did the money for the education go?
Mm-hmm.
So they have been raising an issue. When Lily ran 4 years ago for mayor, it was essentially, her campaign was, we will have a forensic audit conducted immediately with outside people to go through the checkbook ledgers and the deposits to find out where the money came from and who were the payees on the checks and where's the money, and we're going to get it back, and we're going to get the feds in here to investigate and prosecute whoever's responsible and recover the money. And there has been an alliance, again, from the municipal level up to the senators in this state against her on that basis. That happened last time. She was a Democratic candidate in 2007, and you did not see Hillary Clinton, who was a senator, or Schumer lift a finger to support her, but rather they had press conferences with the then Republican mayor who was running again, who was reelected by like 80 votes or something. The same with Maurice Hinchey, who's supposedly a progressive Democrat, who's the congressional representative there. The state representatives of both parties, everyone lined up for the establishment, the current mayor, who is still the mayor. And in my opinion, the reason is that everybody's had their hand in the cookie jar, and they don't want they don't want it to get out where the money went.
Mm-hmm. Lloyd D'Aguilar.
Well, you want me to say something about what's happening in Jamaica?
No. Respond to what
well, I'm not too familiar with that case, but based on what we know, how how activists have been treated in the past. Yeah, I mean, I'm not really surprised by what he's saying.
Right. Well, I don't know if both of you are familiar with this, but a U.S. appeals court has ordered the Obama administration again to stop enforcing the ban on allowing gay men and women serving openly in the military. The U.S. military, that is. The Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals lifted a previous ruling which allowed the government to enforce the don't ask, don't swell, or don't tell.
You think the administration is going to challenge it? I mean, because if they do challenge it, they'd really look,
Well, it says here that the Barack administration repealed the don't ask, don't tell, allowing gays to...
No. But then the military said we need some time before we can implement it.
Yeah, but I'm talking about this court decision.
Right. Well, this has been pending in the courts for a while. We're at the appellate level now, the federal appellate court, the Ninth Circuit. But the essentially what happened, this is one thing that the Obama administration did sort of right. I mean, what they, rather than just removing the policy altogether, what they did was stop enforcing and stop defending in court, essentially falling on their sword, so that there really is no one litigating to sustain the ban.
Mm-hmm.
So, the court, when you have both sides, one side is advocating for a position and the other side is sitting on their hands, generally the one that's advocating for position will prevail, and that's more or less what's happened here right now.
Yeah.
You're saying the courts will prevail?
Well, the courts will ultimately, I think. But what happened was the Obama administration basically stopped prosecuting the case to sustain the don't ask, don't tell rule. And so, which had gone to court under the Bush administration to protect that policy.
Mm-hmm.
And when the Obama administration essentially stopped the defense of the policy in the courts, the courts started ruling to overturn the policy.
Yeah. And
so what's going to happen now that with same-sex marriage? Is Obama going to oppose that too? Because he has expressed opposition to that.
It's very interesting because same-sex marriage marriage laws in the United States are generally and historically have been done at the state rather than the federal level. And the only federal activity until the Clinton administration were things that helped to harmonize the laws from one state to another. If you have this right in New York, then California has to recognize it, this sort of thing, which is a constitutional issue. It has to do with how the states' laws get harmonized for particularly things that have to do with human and civil rights.
Mm-hmm.
But during the Clinton administration, excuse me, there was a law passed that he signed called the Defense of Marriage Act, which essentially outlawed same-sex marriage, and it said that marriage declared that marriage is between a man and a woman. Now, the political configuration at that time is very interesting. If you look at the supporters of that bill, you'll see many so-called progressive Democrats voted for that bill, and again, it was signed into law by Bill Clinton. So now you have a situation where clearly the political winds have changed, or in any event, they've been allowed to be expressed, so that people are aware of the fact that the public favors people having the right to marry regardless of gender. And the only in New York where I live, they just passed a law over the last few weeks authorizing same-sex marriages in New York, which are recognized in any other state because of the way the laws are.
Weren't some Republicans threatening to change? I don't know if it was a constitution or what, but
they would challenge it under this federal law.
Marriage can only be between a man and a woman.
Right. They're standing on this federal law that Clinton signed. That's right now the biggest impediment to this happening on a broader scale, and also it's an impediment to people, say, who get married in New York being able to claim full civil rights as married people elsewhere. And so what's happening is that there's going to be contests. I mean, New York's law was just passed, so it hasn't hit the courts yet, but you will see people, Republicans and some Democrats, attempting to...
We're going to challenge it?
I'm sorry.
We're going to challenge it?
Yes, they're going to...
They're going to legally challenge it?
Yeah, to enforce this federal law, which says, man and woman marriage, period.
Right.
And as I said, when it was enacted,
yeah,
the overwhelming majority of Democrats voted for it also, and it was signed into law by Hillary Clinton's husband.
Yeah,
so
I think
see how it plays
all
out.
of them, just like in California, I think everywhere they're going to challenge it, and you're going to have some courts that will rule yes, and some will rule no. So we'll see. It's
Lloyd,
interesting days ahead.
Yep.
When is it going to be legal down in Jamaica?
Well, man, I had my film last week, Tuesday. I think we might have spoken about it.
Yeah, we did.
Wednesday. Yeah,
we did.
It was well received, and I touched on that issue in that documentary.
Just remind folks what the documentary was about.
It was called Not in My Cabinet, Homophobia in Jamaica.
Uh-huh.
And was well received. The J Flag, which is our gay organization here, they're going to be showing it throughout Jamaica and even in New York soon, maybe.
Good.
So you should look out in your area.
We'll have them up here. Don't worry. We'll have them right on this show. Don't worry.
Yeah, they'll be showing it up there soon, I think.
Mm-hmm. That was Golding, right?
Take a look at it.
Bruce Golding.
But that wasn't that what that was Golding's quote originally, right?
Yeah,
no
he said not in my cabinet.
I see. That's a good one.
That phrase by him.
That's pretty good. Yeah. What is his position? Just like Obama's?
Yeah, well, he and the leader of the opposition, they're both in agreement.
Get out of here. Are you serious?
That Jamaica is a Christian country, that our culture is not for homosexuality or laws against it, and so on and so forth. So Jamaica doesn't want to be pressured by anybody. Just leave us alone. That's our culture.
Yeah, but what about the rights of other Jamaicans? Come on. Live with me. They don't exist.
These people are the minority.
Out of many come one people. They don't exist. Explain that to Lister.
They have to respect the
out of
views
many
of the
comes
majority,
a few.
And they have to respect the culture.
Really?
That's their position. Both of them have said that.
Really?
Not in my cabinet. In somebody else's cabinet, but not in my cabinet.
Yeah.
That's their position.
Amazing. Now, Don and Lloyd, you heard that the El Presidente of the United States has finally decided that he's going to start writing letters to, for example, I heard on this Amy Goodman show, Democracy Now!, how this interracial Jamaican family, this Jamaican woman who married an American up here, had a Jamaican son who went and fought Barack's war and came back frustrated and committed suicide, and they begged the president for even a little piece of paper saying, "We sympathize with your weeping eyes," and he said, "God damn you, I would never do that because it's policy." So I just heard that they've changed that policy. Is that so?
That's what I'm hearing.
The policy whereby the President of the United States refuses to acknowledge any American poor person who go and fight a rich man's imperialist war, comes back real frustrated and realize that was a dumb thing they did and decide to commit suicide. The President of the United States says, "We will never recognize you."
Yeah.
That was their policy. So Barack was confronted with the situation with this Jamaican American family, and he said, "Go to hell," basically. And now they have changed that.
He's changed his course now. That was yesterday.
Yeah. Now heading into a crucial negotiation session on the capitalist front. We're talking about a budget deal on Thursday. El Presidente Barack has raised his sights and wants to strike a fair reaching agreement and on cutting the cutting Social Security on the back of the poor people and dealing with its deficit, as his cohort, John A. Crybaby Bonner, am I saying it right? Has signaled, John Bonner signaled a new willingness to cut a deal. Is this so? Obama, who is to meet at the White House with the bipartisan leadership of the Congress in an effort to work out some sort of an agreement to raise the federal debt limit. They're playing Russian roulette with that thing, Don, Lloyd. Wants to move well beyond the $2 trillion in savings sought in earlier negotiations and seek perhaps twice as much over the next decade. Democratic officials briefed on this situation stated. Is that so, Lloyd? Is that so, Don?
Yeah. Look, I mean, underlying all of this is the fantasy that there's no money. I mean, there's an economic crisis for absolutely certain, and the bulk of the crisis is being borne, by working people and poor people who, were working people and now are unemployed people. They've cobbled together, unemployment benefits and various, survival net, things that basically, I think, to forestall a revolution, things are getting that bad. And you're looking at some of the objective markers like foreclosure filings and others. You're looking at another dip, if it's not a collapse over the precipice, coming. And so, rather than looking at the $2 trillion that they're spending in Iraq and Afghanistan and the other wars that they're taking on now, and the underlying defense budget, I mean, the United States has military expenditure that is larger than the rest of the world combined. And rather than looking at that, they're looking at cutting Social Security and other
Medicaid, Social Security.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at this stuff
Medicare.
myself. My wife is eligible for Medicare beginning the first of next month, and we're getting shifted off of our health insurance into that, and looking at our costs going up by at least $8,000 next year because of this. This is after the health care reform, by the way, and this is before any cut. She gets Social Security disability. This is before any cut to Social Security. So after a cut, I don't know where that leaves us, and we're relatively well off because the two of us had jobs for most of our adult lives, and so and we have some coverage from her for health insurance from her former job. The bulk of people don't have that, and we're looking at a disaster. So for most people, they're looking at outright catastrophe, and these guys are sitting around talking about making that worse. It's frightening.
Yeah.
Well, what is also interesting is this talk about the debt and whether it would take it down to the wire and the U.S. would default on its debt, whether that would be a catastrophe for the international economic system. There was a report coming out, I don't remember which one of the international rating agencies, saying that Jamaica and Greece are the two countries most likely to default. Well, Greece could default if it doesn't get the backing of the International Monetary Fund and the European Union. Jamaica, the same thing. But the United States, if politics really take a turn for the worse, the United States is also one of the most indebted countries. Of course, it's not Greece and it's not Jamaica.
Right.
But if anything close to default were to take place, I think China probably would finally eclipse the United States as the country of stability in the world economic system.
Yeah.
I mean, they of course would be very pissed off if that were to happen.
I know, because they own most of the paper.
Really?
You know, they wouldn't be too happy about that because the bulk of the money that is owed by the United States is owed to China.
Yep, that's right.
But this really would be the eclipse of the American imperialist system.
And now what's frightening is what the Chinese are about to do. I mean, there's been some reporting the last day or two about this, but apparently they have a great deal of construction going on there, and a lot of it is very heavily financed. I mean, it looks like what they're doing is modeling off of the fact pattern that left the United States here.
Yeah, that's what I'm just looking. That's what I'm looking right here. It says in the New York Times this morning, in the 7 years, in the 7 years it will take the New York City to build a 2-mile leg of its long awaited 2nd Avenue subway line. This city of 9 million people in central China plans to complete an entire subway system, nearly 140 miles of track.
Right.
And in Wuhan, metro is only one piece of 120 billion municipal master plans that includes 2 new airport terminals and a new financial district, a cultural district, and it goes on and on this riverfront. And they're spending and spending, and the inflation is creeping up on their butt, and they're gonna go into more debt. And
yep.
You know, speaking about debt, I think that Greece should just default in the whole capitalist trickery that they're trying to pull off on them after Goldman Sachs came into town and sucked their blood and disappeared. Don't you think that would be best? Because in Russia defaulted, nothing happened. Argentina defaulted and they kicked out the IMF, and Argentina is doing pretty good. Why shouldn't Greece just default in these captives?
What about Jamaica? Why are you leaving Jamaica out of it?
I'm about to say Jamaica should default too. Don't you think?
We absolutely should default.
Why not?
Maybe the United States should also default.
Why not?
Yeah.
Why not? I mean,
start over. I mean, what happened? You had essentially, you've had this, intensive class war that has basically it's over. I mean, they won. They got all the money, and the problem is now what?
Yeah, they had nobody to stop them, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they can we don't have any wherewithal anymore. Not even borrowing power.
Now they're choking on their own vomit. Let them choke, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Hell yeah.
So, and if they're going to choke on paper, so much the better for me to do,
Yeah. Lloyd, wrap it up for me, and then Don, wrap it up for me, because we're running out of time.
Well, I just want to say one thing, and it applies to the United States as well. It's like, I don't know if I mentioned on the program last week, but bear with me again. This thing about vaccination, mandatory vaccinations, it killed a 1-year-old boy some weeks ago.
Yeah.
He'll be buried this weekend coming, and the state lied and said that it was going to put vaccination on hold while it investigates. It hasn't put the thing on hold, and they're still trying to force people to vaccinate, and I believe that people should have the right to make a choice whether they want to vaccinate or not. You should not force healthy people to go and inject all kind of nasty chemical stuff into their body and run the risk of children developing autism and all kinds of childhood diseases. So I wrote a letter about it. It was published in the newspaper Thursday.
I see it right now.
Yeah, you're looking at it, huh?
Yep.
What does it say, Don?
Applies all over the world. They don't want people to know that in Jamaica, it's a violation of the Constitution to force somebody to do this. But we don't know, so people just go ahead and do it. And it really is oppressive. And all over the world, people should know that they have a right not to vaccinate themselves and their children if they choose not to.
I hear you. Don DeBar.
Lloyd made a great point in this letter, which goes right to the heart of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the one hand, the government is saying that these things are safe, and on the other hand, they're saying they're putting it on hold. And he says, well, why would you put it on hold if it's safe? If you know it's safe, what's the point?
Sounds like fracturing in New York State with Governor Cuomo, right?
Yes.
Same old thing. Yeah. All right, Don DeBar, wrap it up for me.
Okay. I think we have a lot of bad stuff going on right now, and what we need to be doing is figuring out how to organize and get people to work on protecting themselves against the government and capital, especially capital, with government as their weapon, because it's not going to get better until that happens, and unless there's a fundamental change in the the locus of power, basically, and until that moves to the people and away from capital, we're screwed.
Mm-hmm. And Don, keep us informed on that Newburgh situation with.
I will do that.
The what's his name again? Who's running for mayor?
Omari Shakur.
Omar, yeah. That's the son of
Lily Howard.
Yeah, and you tell her I send my love.
I will do that.
Lloyd D'Aguilar, when are you gonna get back on the radio? How can we stay in touch with you?
Well, man, that's it for me. There's been no radio anymore, it looks like. So I don't know,
Well, you're stuck right here at 99 Cinco, Lister Live.
We'll see what happens.
Burn, y'all. Eh?
Is there something we can do to help you?
Yeah, what can we do to help you?
And I'm so happy and mad right now. I'm trying to figure out what to do. Whether to take legal action, whether to just blast these people, in the media and stuff like that. But I'm going to measure my cloth before I decide to cut.
I hear you.
By next week I'll be able to tell you what you can do to help.
All right, let me run. I wish both of you a belated flag burning day. That was on July the 4th. Didn't get an opportunity to tell you that, but I hope you wearing the red, white, and blue, barbecue it and all of that stuff, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, Don, thanks a lot. We'll do this next week, same place.
Thank you.
Lloyd D'Aguilar down in Kilsum, Jamaica.
Right,
Your favorite Rahina tune for you. Thanks for tuning in. And we do this next week, same place, same time, all right?
Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, all the best.
Bye.
Take care.
Al Jazeera up.